Most people will argue that the only way to go for recording is a USB audio interface and software. In fact, if somebody asks me what I recommend for beginners or somebody that just wants to do casual recording in their bedroom, I will recommend a $200 interface anytime. But in order to really be able to do professional work, you should be able to record an entire band at a time. The most important part of recording a band is getting a compelling performance, vibe, and that's almost impossible to do if you're recording instruments one at a time. Very few musicians are up to this. Often the best way to record is with the entire band playing together. We'll typically use anywhere from 6 to 8 recording inputs just for the drums, and then you'll have guitar, bass, keyboard. Vocals are not that big of a deal, but you generally want to be able to record a scratch vocal along with the band, and then you can replace it later. I know you can get 3 8-channel audio interfaces for under $1,000, but you really don't want cheap interfaces for this. The reason for that is that lower signals you wind up having too much noise, and with hotter signals the signal tends to get kind of fuzzy. This is because the analog components in cheap interfaces are crap. There's no way around it. Nevertheless, you can have a perfectly acceptable analog-digital hybrid hardware recording system for less than $1,500. Let's break down what you need. The first thing you need is a mixer. This is what you'll be using for preamps, monitoring, and creating the final mix. While I would normally suggest steering away from brands like Mackie, Behringer, and the like, sometimes they're unavoidable because they do provide a very low cost and compact solution. Don't feel too bad if this is your only option. I've done plenty live recordings on a Mackie 1604 and the next device that I list, the Alesis HD24. This is a standalone 24-track digital hard drive, and it can record up to 24 tracks simultaneously. The HD24 can be had for $400 or less. It will record and play back the tracks, that is all. Now we need to tie the mixer to the HD24. We can use a pair of 12-channel snakes available for $55 each, or a total of $110. This is called an insert snake, and that's very important. What it does is allow you to take the signal directly from the mixer's preamps and send them to the HD24 to be recorded. From there, they'll go to the HD24's output jacks back through the rest of the channel on the same mixer. This is very handy because you can start setting up a mix while you're recording, and what you do on the mixer, save for the preamp level, does not affect what's being recorded. We do not need any EQ because pretty much everything you need is built into the mixer itself. But what you do need is compressors. Compression is important to sculpt the dynamics of the sounds that you're capturing. The first I would suggest is an FMR Audio RNC1773. This is an extremely clean compressor that can be bought new for $175 or used for about $120. I also recommend a dirtier sounding compressor like the Alesis 3630, which can be had used for $70 including shipping. The reason that this compressor sounds dirty is because the built-in noise gate interferes with the level detector on the compressor. You can actually cut the traces and remove the noise gate from the signal entirely, or you can add in a switch on the front panel if you want to be able to have gating on occasion. Another thing we'll need is a reverb, or a multi-effects processor that has a reverb function on it. This is important to set the space for your music, or the environment in which it exists. It might be nice to have a bunch of reverbs in order to get different effects on different tracks. In reality, this is not really necessary because, after all, a band only exists in one space at any given time, and it can sound quite distracting or even alien when you have different instruments in different sounding environments on the same mix. In fact, at the height of my own studio's complexity, I had 4 digital reverbs and 2 analog reverbs. Really, in most cases, I just picked the best one for that particular mix and stuck with it. You may be thinking a lot of this gear is really old, which it is, but that doesn't mean it's not any good. In fact, I put it to the test and found that oftentimes older but more professionally oriented converters such as what's found in the HD24 can often outperform budget converters, even though they're newer. Reverb is another such device. It's a matter of the algorithm more than the architecture. Finally, we'll need some 1/4-inch instrument cables to help tie everything together. These will be what you use to tie the compressors and the reverb into the mixer and the HD24 respectively. You only need 1 send to go to the reverb, but 2 returns. If you find a better deal on some of these items, you can use that freed up capital to buy an extra compressor or maybe a dedicated delay. You can really expand this as you go, so the absolute bare essentials you need in order to do a full recording are the mixer, the multi-track, and the insert snakes. The rest can be added later as you get more money. One of my clients recently set up a hardware-based studio, and he still has his computer for extra effects if he wants them. You might be thinking, I'm going to need a lot more compressors than that if I'm going to be recording and mixing an entire band, but you really don't need one for every track. There are certain sound sources that you can count on requiring compressors, such as bass, vocals, or clean guitars, and you can deal with these during the recording process by inserting the compressors between the mixer's preamps and the recording inputs on the HD24. Any other instruments where you may or may not need compression, you can handle those in the mix. I find it rare that acoustic guitar really works well with compression, and drums, usually only the bass drum, or maybe set up a compression bus on the RNC. At the height of my own studio's complexity, I had 8 RNCs and 4 other standalone compressors on top of that, but I just didn't need them. What about gates, you say? Well, that's why we have the 3630 or a similar product. Gates are not really a necessity in my opinion, and I do entire albums without using any. Most of the time we keep noise down to a minimum by muting channels we're not using or spot erasing tracks on the HD24. You can even create your final mix without a computer by mixing to 2 spare tracks on the HD24. And if you make a mistake, you can simply back up the recording a little bit and then punch in a correction on the mix itself so you don't have to start from scratch. It's a very efficient way to work, and I've done it myself many times. You can master directly off of the mix tracks. You can use FTP to beam the mixes over to a computer, or you can actually pull the hard drive and use a caddy to offload the files. Perhaps down the road I can do another video outlining how all this works in greater detail. In the meantime, I hope this was useful. Thank you for watching, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe.